Every day I see you and it takes my heart, and the way your smile brightens every star. And I know you never notice the way I fall so hard, float away. I think I look too far into the future, see it feels so good, I almost breathe it. Look up in the night, lay in the grass, and she said, I know the one I love is here tonight, under the same moonlight, and we're searching. I know the one I love is out there somewhere, somewhere, I swear we're looking. The other day, nothing goes and breaks your heart lately. I've been there when you fall apart, and I never notice the way you light the dark in the night. Suddenly, I think I'm looking right into the future, see it feels so good, I almost breathe it. Look up in the night, lay in the grass, and she said, I know the one I love is here tonight, under the same moonlight, and we're searching. I know the one I love is out there somewhere, somewhere, I swear we're looking. And she said, I know the one I love is here tonight, under the same moonlight, and it's right in front of me. Yeah. I know the one I love is here tonight, under the same moonlight, and we're searching. Whoa, I know the one I love is out there somewhere, somewhere, I swear we're looking. Just right in front of me,
All right. Well, everybody, welcome to the Warm Audio Clinic. I'm Freddy Demarco, and you're at Demarco's Recording Studio, which is a part of Demarco's School of Music. We're in Hudson, Ohio. So we have a huge amount of talent in the Midwest, right here in the Akron-Cleveland area, and we have a camp of people that we draw from where we do a whole lot of production for people. We do recordings. This place is known for doing anything from a commercial voiceover to an industry commercial, all the way to a heavy metal band. We do video work as well. We do a lot of work for clients such as different music companies and do a lot of stuff that they post on YouTube's launch videos for products, all the way to music videos for our band clients. And I have with me some very special people today that came out for this Warm Audio Clinic. The reason is we're so impressed with Warm Audio that, we ended up getting a whole rack of it. Now, this studio is equipped with a rack of a lot of different vintage or traditional, like 1176s, LA2A, stuff like that. And I got to tell you a story. Doug Jenkins right here, who is a mastering engineer that we work with. He's iMix and Master. He'll tell you a little bit about himself and his YouTube channel. We do STEM services where we run stuff through this hot gear and send it back to the client, and then they mix it. Real fun stuff like that upon taking on mixes and masters. The song you just heard was from a band, very talented up-and-coming band of young guys called Recess. This is Anthony Fondale, and the Recess guys, they do it's very modern pop. You heard it. It's awesome. We were working on that mix yesterday, and we were running it through mostly Warm Audio stuff. We do use the Warm Audio as plugins, not just for tracking. So we're going to show you how we do that. Anthony's going to talk a little bit about the song. I have with me an assistant, Dominic Merletti. Dominic's a great guitar player, plays with the Waves and No Expectations. He is an intern at the studio as well. Dylan Roth. Dylan, come on up here. Dylan is an extraordinary drummer, live and session player. He's going to be our session drummer today, so we're throwing stuff at him last minute. And he's also an incredible engineer. He does really big gigs with live sound. He has his own studio and production group called the Mad Rabbit Media Group, and those guys are killer. So he's a phenomenal engineer. In fact, I'm either calling Doug or Dylan here for help all the time, it's just how it rolls. But no, we have a really great community here. And featured singer today, awesome live performer and session singer, is Dave Brooks. So he's going to be with us as well. Dave plays in a tribute band. It's an 80s tribute called The Breakfast Club on top of his lineage. Just look him up. So we got a really cool thing going on today. We're going to show you how we do a live song. Some tracks will be pre-recorded. Some tracks we're going to track right here, put ourselves on the spot as session players and trudge our way through this event for you guys. I do want to make mention briefly of all our sponsors. So the guitars, I already played a bass track and a rhythm track. They were played on these DNA guitars. They're handmade from Northern California. I'll play a lead live off the Jewel. This is another handmade guitar over here on the left side of the studio. Yeah, this one right here. So we want to thank them. Also locally for us, Akron has a company that's just been taking off like crazy for the last few years, just dominating the pedal company called Earthquaker Devices. I'll be playing their Palisades pedal, using it for a little drive to front end the amp. We're very pleased to say that Vox and Blackstar, two of the greatest amp companies around, are sponsoring. So my amps are in a middle room, and I'm miking up an AC30 with a 421, and I'm going to be miking up the Blackstar with the Warm Audio WA87. A lot of times I'll run two amplifiers, and I love the 87. So let me talk about that for a second so you really understand Warm Audio. What they do is they actually produce incredible products, but they're really re-emulating some relic pieces. So the famous LA2A, they have their WA2A. Their 76s, their EQs, their Pultecs are famous EQs, very sought after tube EQs. They build their versions of those and microphones. So the 87 I'm talking about is a rebuild of a very traditional microphone, and we're going to also be featuring their WA14s, which is a very sought-after capsule they chose from the lineage of the 414 line, and they put theirs together based off of one of the most sought-after years, or versions, I should say. We're also tracking most of this stuff through the WA4. These compressors right here. So we're going to actually be going the 412s, and they're modeled after, well, I'll just say it, API type pre's. So this is the story. Doug Jenkins got a hold of one of these 76s, and I paid $2,000 for mine. He says, this thing is as good as yours. I said, I don't believe it. It's a third of the price or less. I'm not good at math. Anyhow, I said, bring it by. So we brought it by, and we actually did a shootout, and you could find that shootout today on the Warm Audio website page. So that's warmaudio.com. So go to warmaudio.com and you'll be able to actually witness the shootout. That day I was blown away. That's when I started my relationship with Warm Audio. We shot out vocals, different styles of vocals, different styles of guitar, bass, snare drum, kick drum, and I was able to get these 76s to react like my more traditional ones. And it really allows us to be able to create STEM sessions that are affordable. So we could run, if somebody wants their sessions, like let's say somebody's at home and they want to heat up their session, we actually run through this gear. And Doug has his own studio that's loaded with the gear. And between the two of us, we could actually burn your mix in 1 or 2 times through, giving you different snare options, different guitar options. And because they make it so affordable, we could have a rack of it where we don't have to charge for so many hours. Now, at home, these are great pieces, not for professionals, absolutely, but also for the person that's diving into hardware. Like maybe not necessarily a beginner, perhaps a beginner, but an intermediate person that wants to experiment outside of the box. The cool thing about this is it's affordable, and you could do your own stems if you wanted to, if you're purchasing this. Dylan, don't you do a lot of stuff where you actually run things through and then you do another pass dedicated to a kick drum, then dedicated to a snare drum pass? So it's not necessary that you have 20 compressors in your studio, but...
Yeah, I'm loaded with all the same gear, and from jump, ever since I showed up, I found him in Nashville on accident, and everything he said, I've been doing the same thing too, and it's pretty seamless and flawless.
Okay, well, we're going to start today reliving that tune that we just heard by Recess. I want Anthony to come up and tell us a little bit about it as a testimony. So this was just yesterday. He's meeting with some record people on the 30th of, it's a real exciting time for you, isn't it? Yeah. So we have to. But it's going to be tough for me. I got to mix the record here in this next month. But actually, he does a lot of the songwriting for the band, his own arranging. He takes stuff home, does his own editing, and I engineer some, produce a little bit, but mainly engineer and help him with the hardware gear and stuff. But Anthony's a great up-and-coming engineer himself, as is Dominic. But let me turn this over to Anthony. Tell us a little bit about the song that they just heard. I think you had a little story about the vocals, didn't you?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so our first album we recorded here, we ran through a different setup, and this time we saw the Warm Audio preamps and stuff that Freddy had, and we wanted to try them out, and we really wanted to go for a clean sound this time. So we ran through those preamps. You can't see them, but they're over here. They turned out really clean, and just less distortion. It was less of our taste. Other people like that. It wasn't really for this album, and we recorded them, we got them down, and we actually planned on going through this 2A over here, which we tried out just yesterday. I'm not quite sure what kind it is. I'm more of a producer type guy. The Teletronics 2A, and it really put off this harmonic distortion, which sounded cool, but it wasn't really for the song. And I actually... We went against the plan, and I asked Freddy to try running it through the Warm Audio 2A, and it just tended to be a little bit cleaner, and it fit the album really well. It gave it the thickness it needed, and of course we used I don't know if we used the 76 for the limiting. Yeah, we used the 76 emulators to limit, and the 2A emulators for the actual compression.
Yeah, so I'm going to step in. Yeah, actually what we ended up doing was we ended up hitting this at 12-1 for compression. And we did a kind of a slow attack, and we actually limited, and I was basically getting the limit to hit at around -3, just soften up what the 76 was doing up front. But that's traditional. I mean, this goes back to when these were invented. I mean, so many famous records and great vocalists use that chain, that 76 and 2A chain. Now, for us to be able to, again, I mean, I'm not going to go all day as a sales pitch for Warm Audio because that's not what we're doing. But I got to say, to be able to get this kind of hardware that reacts just like the originals for this price point, we're able to do this all day long. But that's technically the signal path we used.
Oh yeah, that's compression, and we also ended up running through the Pultex to pull up the high end for that real breathiness sound. If you listen to a lot of pop records, they have this type of breath in it, and some people are known to use whisper tracks for it. We tended to like I think we pulled up around 16K we boosted, around 6 or 7.
We went 3 dB at 16.
Yeah, we pulled 3 dB up at 16 kilohertz.
And we actually cut 100 1 dB.
And we cut 100 out 1 dB, which they were recorded really thick, so we didn't actually need as much as we got. And it turned out how you heard. It's really clean, and of course the vocal performance was there, so that helped too. But he sang really breathy, and we were able to pull it out and get it compressed and EQ'd right.
Thanks a lot, Anthony. So there's that's Anthony. Look up Recess. Definitely check them out on Facebook. Great band. Also, well, I'll tell you what. Let's just dive right into it. So we're going to actually record. So this is what goes on in a session. So there can be anomalies. There can be a guy like me that forgets how he wired his patch bay. There could be all kinds of things that go on. There could be a drummer in there that just wants to throw a stick at the camera. You just never know how anyone's going to react in the studio. Now, actually, we got a professional group here. Fun guys, but professional. But yeah, you'll see. I'm sure you'll see a lot of things happen. Some cool stuff. We might be held up a little bit, but that's the real world, and you're just literally looking in at what we do. So we'll be passing the mic around, and we're going to start with the drum track. What we decided to do, and before we go through with it, for those of you that like more of an R&B or even hip-hop, Doug is I consider him an expert in the hip-hop field. He's going to talk about how he mixes some hip hop, and he's going to show you how he uses the warm stuff to crush a hip hop vocal and make it spit out and be very authentic for the style. But before we get there, we're going to do this live thing. So basically, we were actually contracted to do The Thrill Is Gone that B.B. King made famous. Now, The Thrill Is Gone has a bossa nova bass line to it, a Latin bass line. But we were asked to beef it up, swing it more, do some stuff with it. So we actually got some loop action going, where Dylan's going to have to cut out, let the loop play a little bit to get a bit of an urban sound. I'm using motion synths that are timed to a much faster tempo than the original Thrill Is Gone. There's going to be somewhat of a bluesy guitar. Then later on, there's going to be a mix of a shred guitar. So this is kind of an eclectic thing. The one thing that pulls it together is it is The Thrill Is Gone. So a lot of people know it, and we kind of mix and match some different elements of different styles. And for us, this would have to be done. Basically, the music would be done some days by noon, get the vocalist here, that has to be cut. We have to mix the thing and get it out the door. So, you could take a week on this with a couple remixes and really tweak it, or you can move it quickly for a commercial client right out the door. That's more of how we're doing this. So I laid in the motion synths. I laid in the loop, the clavinet, the rhythm guitar, and the bass guitar. Today, the performances will be the lead vocal, the lead guitar, and the drums. The drums are always my favorite. They're usually the hardest thing to deal with. In fact, Dylan was helping me with some phasing issues earlier with the room. And we'll be able to view Dylan over on a screen here, and you'll see the drums set up over there. So, Dylan, if you just want to talk briefly about what you're going to do, but I do want to get to the fun stuff and get the drumming going, but tell them quickly what we're doing, because I'll tell you right now that we have the new 14s, the new WA14s is the overheads, and we're rolling them off, and we're also padding them -20. I have my room mic where we're going into this compressor here, which is a 76 with the 4-button move to get a very crushed signal. A lot of people think of that, and we'll coin that the John Bonham Zeppelin type sound. That's the WA87 in the room doing that. That's going to be most of the heavy lifting. I do have 421s on the toms, 57 top of the snare, bottom of the snare, of course, throwing the bottom of the snare, flipping the phase on that. Using an AKG 414 on the hi-hat. Just because of the style of music, we wanted to sneak in some extra snare information with that, and we liked the tone it gave on his hi-hat. But if you wanted to just make a quick mention of anything you could tell us about your kit, real quick.
Yeah. Well, with this being kind of a hybrid version of the song that's at hand, they have now inserted this stuff on me live, as he said, with the 4-button move, smashing in the room mic and whatnot. So I'm actually playing into this compression as a musician. So this is going to be a different feel for me rather than if I was going completely with no EQ and no compression to tape. This is, I would say, a really good example of what you can get straight to tape with what Warm Audio has to provide without overdoing it before mixdown.
Well put, well put. So what we're going to do is let's sound check. You can go in there, get your cans on. We already routed, so you don't have to sit through the boredom and the monotony of a routing session. But I will go through each channel and let you know the signal path and what we're doing. So this is my favorite part of it, is kind of creating going to tape. I like to commit. Of course, when you have your own studio, you can commit because I could always redo stuff. Of course, you end up paying the drummer twice, but nah. But quite frankly, though, I like making the decisions, going down somewhat, but leaving room for more compression later. Like Dylan said, you don't want to over-compress. So as we get going here, the very first track on my session is a drum loop, and I'm going to play you just the loop really quickly. So that's lo-fied. I know it's not coming in too loud, but that's kind of the feel we started with, and we started making a bass line from there because we already knew what the song was. And from that point, the next channel is going to be the kick drum. And I'm going to ask Dylan to go ahead and hit the kick. So Dylan, right now what I'm doing is telling everybody this, the routing and the signal path. So we're going to start with just the kick drum and let them hear a little of that. Feel free to play a kick drum for me. So I'm muting all other tracks, and you're going to hear it minimized down to just the kick drum. We want a pad in there. We don't want a real high slap on it for this style, what's happening. So the routing is, the Pultec on this hits first. I'm at 3 dB, pushing a low 60 hertz of air. I could always take that out later, but I want that warm pad in there. I'm also hitting a little between 3 and 4 dB. I'm boosting 8 kilohertz just for a little bit of snap on the attack. The compression is hitting this first 1176, or I'm sorry, this first WA76, and I'm going light. I'm going 4-to-1. Attack is medium slow, and the release not too long, but I want to keep the release going for a little while. So. Okay, Dylan, give me a second. I'm going to explain about compression real quick. For those of you that don't know what a compressor does, a compressor is designed to put a threshold and stop a sound from peaking up, so it controls the sound. That's its basic fundamental thing. However, you can use it for sustain with longer release times. For example, we'll often time a snare drum. The rattles of the snare make the release last as long as the beat, and it helps the rhythm out that way. You can also use these to color your sound, not compress at all, just run through these type of transformers and this type of circuitry, and it often just is enough to color right there, even if you don't want to compress. So essentially, I'm doing that in many cases. This, I am compressing. I like the feel of it. But when you do compress, you can use compressors for one more thing, and that's for effect. We could push compressors very hard and get them to squash, and they get what we call misbehaving. And I do a lot of rock and roll stuff. In the rock and roll world, we like a lot of misbehaving tonality, and a lot of that does come from 76 type compression. Before all that, though, we are hitting the WA 412 preamp. And I'm getting the pre-hit pretty good into the compressor, but I don't want too much compression because that compression, as it's compressing, it's also going to be bringing up, the ratio is going to bring up the noise floor. And I don't want to suck too much snare drum or hi-hat into the kick drum mic. We can misuse the compressor and get that problem. So then if I want to crank some high end on the kick to get more slap or boost it and really compress it again in the mix, and now I sucked in too much hi-hat into that mic from over compressing, I have an issue. So we've watched out for that. I'm going to move on to the snare drum. Okay, Dylan, let's go to snare, and we're going to do top snare. So there's a 57 there. There is a ring on that, but for all intents and purposes today, we're going to live with that. I don't have a problem with that. Okay, Dylan, just a second. Some people would spend more time on that. I probably would, but for what I'm going to do, if in the worst case I could always drum replace that, I wouldn't do that with a drummer like this because he's going to ghost a lot. But we could do that. The reason I don't have a problem with it, it sounds natural, and I do have a loop going, and I want to distinguish the live drummer from the loop. I want it to sound a little bit raw. I'm not gonna that's not hurting us right now. Some engineers I know are disagreeing with me right now, so I'm sure we're gonna get comments on that. Okay, so let's go have him hit the snare, then we'll hear what the bottom snare is sounding like, and I'll talk about the signal path. Okay, I'm going to let him hear the bottom snare. Go ahead. Just the bottom. Picking up the snares. Here's the top head, the batter head. Okay, thank you. So the signal path there is the warm audio. And for those of you that know these preamps, I do have the tone buttons in. It's putting a little more hair on it, a little more aggressive. We're hitting this EQ here. So I am putting some 100 in it, a little bit of weight for body, because they are 57s we're going through. I'm not using anything fancy or elaborate. And then I'm also bringing out, it ended up being 8K. I thought it would have been 5, but it's 8K at about 3 dB to bring in some little bit of snap up on top. We're good there. Hi-hat, Dylan. Now this hi-hat, I'm just going direct. Just give me some hi-hat patterns. Yeah. Okay, let's go to tom, the first rack tom. Okay, we're going to listen to both toms. Let's listen to both toms, Dylan. Okay, very good. That sounds good. Okay, you're also hearing the warm preamp on those. I'm loving that. And I'm doing a trick now on this. And what I'm doing is I'm hitting those warms, and I'm double preamping through my console. I have a Toft console, which is basically the sound of Trident. I really like these EQs, so I'm routing them through these EQs, and they're very, very nice EQs for drums. And I'm just doing a little bit of roll-off on some cloudy frequencies and boosting just a hair of attack where the stick hits, but I don't want it sounding too unrealistic. I want them to sound like a drum set, not overly produced. So that's what we're doing there, and at the end of that, they are being compressed. So I'm sending those through a couple of my other outboard compressors, 3As to be exact, just for leveling amplifier purposes. They're just compressing a little bit. And the problem you run into there is the cymbals coming in on these tom tracks. But in the final mix, we would actually peel those tracks and cut all the information off of that and let just the attacks of the drums hit and resonate into where the next cymbal hit would hit, and the overheads take over from there. Now here is where the heavy lifting is, and this would be the overheads. And we're going to have that room mic. So I'm going to start with the left and right overheads. Dylan, if you'll go ahead, some beats and stuff, I'm going to present the overheads. Wonderful. Sounds great. So those are just the overheads, and that signal path is going definitely the warm pre's, and I'm hitting an API 2500 bus compressor, but I'm only doing that because it has a link feature on it that balances the compressor from left to right. So if he hits a floor tom real hard, it just, if I set it properly, it knows not to weigh the compression to one side, and I just want that. I'm really not tonal coloring it much. I am using the warm pre to color it, though. I put the tone knobs in, and I'm hitting them pretty hard. I want some natural harmonic distortion, which kind of acts like some mild compression from there, and then into the 2500. Now, this room mic, this is the Zeppelin, John Bonham type thing, where we're crushing this with the 76 here. So I'm going to have him play this 4-button move, and this is awesome that they make this available, just like the originals. I could hit all of these, this ratio, and it goes into a massive limiting mode, and I could still work the threshold and the attack and release and just get a real misbehaving sound. That's a really cool thing to do when you want to suck in the room sound. So I'm getting the reverb from the room sound sucked in. In the meantime, the actual transients are misbehaving into the compressor, creating this really cool thing that you sometimes want to bring in a mix to bring the hair back into the mix and some aggressive compression. Okay, I'm going to show them the Bonham thing. So I know we're not in a castle right now like they did it. But we're going to go ahead and just show just the room mic with that 76 crushed. Go ahead, Dylan. Awesome, buddy. Awesome. Great. So just to have that in there is glorifying. I'd love to have that. Love to see that as my last track of the drums. So that's it. So, essentially I would add some drum replacements just to trigger reverbs and things like that. We're not going to get into all that today. We're going to keep this pretty bare bones. I'm going to hope that his mix is okay, and we're going to get started. Before we get started with this, I want to just make mention of the other sponsors that I haven't mentioned yet, and then we're going to get started. So I mentioned, well, actually, I did mention everybody, didn't I? Did I? See how the mind goes? All right, so let's have some fun. You know what? I already mentioned the sponsors. I'm being redundant. See how we are? All right, anyhow. We have a kick, a snare top, snare bottom, hat, tom, floor tom, overhead left, overhead right, room mic, along with a drum loop. The drum loop cuts out when Dylan plays, so it's going to play in between. So Dylan, none of us really had a whole lot of time with this song, so this is really how a session it develops. So you'll actually see how we're going to develop this stuff quickly. And that's one of the things when you're with session players is it's not always the loudest, the fastest, the highest note that's important. It's how quick we catch on to stuff. It's how we interpret the song. One of the biggest compliments, I think, to a lot of us would be if a singer-songwriter came in, and that's one of the things we do. In fact, these guys do it. Dave Brooks is a songwriter that writes for a lot of artists, and when artists come in that Dave writes for and so forth, we get in here, and as session players, time's money. But more so than that, more than getting it in one take or anything like that, the biggest compliment to us is when someone says, wow, I feel like I've been in a band with you for 5 years. Because not only, we could train a monkey to count to 4. We could practice like crazy to be the fastest, cleanest player. But above that, I think is when you can interpret another human being's work and bring it to life, that's what's magical. And that's what's kind of happening here today. So we started messing with the song earlier today, and this is where we're at so far. We got the bed track, and we're going to let Dylan go ahead and play the drums to it. Dylan, can you do this without the scratch vocal, or would you like the scratch vocal? Hang on a second until I turn your talk back on. Do you want the... Yeah, vocal would be good. You want? Okay, so we're going to put a vocal in. Okay. But Dave, we're still going to make you sing for the crowd, so don't think you're getting off easy. Okay. All right, so here we go. We're going to take a listen. No guarantee we're going to get this in one try. He's still, getting used to the song, so here we go. We're going with the click track, and the music's really low, so this probably won't sound right to the audience until we actually get the mix going. Okay. So it's real world, Dylan. Feel free to stop me if the click's not right, and we're gonna roll anyway. It's more of a sound check, but I'm gonna record anyhow. So here we go. You're gonna have a couple bars of the loop, and then we're in. Recess is trying to get on our set. Did you hear that? All right, here we go. And that's why we call Dylan, ladies and gentlemen. I was just telling him that's why we call Dylan. So he just saved the client. How much you think you saved the client right there on your one take? I don't know. Well, I didn't tell you what I'm charging the client, did I? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Anyhow, that's wonderful. Why don't you come in and we'll take a look at the drum tracks. So I have the music all over the place because I had to lower it for his actual headphone mix. So we're going to mess around with that, and I'm going to hand the mic over to Doug, and he can reiterate what I'm saying to him and elaborate on what we're doing in here a bit. So I'm going to go ahead and unarm record here. Hit save. Tell everybody.
So obviously you got to hit the Command S, which is your save. You got to do that. That's like roll.
And we're on Pro Tools format.
This is actually Pro Tools. I don't know if you can see it way up on screen here, but Freddy's going to be doing some things to give the drums a little lift.
Okay, normally we would be doing parallel compression to make them more aggressive. We're probably not going to do that right now.
So usually on a drum kit, you're going to do like a parallel compression, whether you use the 76s or whatnot. What you do is you send the feed of the actual drums to an auxiliary, and that auxiliary becomes a stereo signal. And then in that stereo signal, you can actually add a secondary compression.
Okay, let's listen to the kick.
So here's the kick. He's just adding a basic plug-in for drums, and we're going to do some basic EQ.
And also tell him that I know kind of the song, the music, so I'm making it agree with the music. I'm not just EQing a kick drum. I'm thinking about the song.
So he's thinking about what the song is, and that's what's going to lead him to what he's going to use on the actual kick drum. So once you get better at mixing and so forth, you've done this for year after year, you know exactly what you want to hear in your head, and you make it happen.
Moving on to a snare drum.
Moving to the snare.
Top snare.
Top snare drum.
Yeah, and I'm not going to use drum replacements. I'm trying to do this with the live drums because he's such a good player. The room's good enough, and the drums are great.
So what Freddy's doing right now is he's going to do everything he can to this snare drum. It's very easy to get into replacement software, things like that. But the problem with that, I mean, you have a phenomenal drummer, great room, all this good stuff. It's hitting the warm stuff, and he's going to do all he can to EQ this snare drum.
So one of the things we're going to do is I'm going to talk to them about how warm audio could be used as inserts.
Oh, on the session?
Yeah.
So in any digital audio workstation, the main thing that a lot of people on my YouTube channel talk about and things like that is, hey, Doug, how do you get it to insert back into your Pro Tools session? With any converter, in this case, I believe it's the Lynx, if it's 16 in and 16 out, you can go out of your converter. You can feed a compressor, an EQ, the 2A, any piece of equipment in your studio, and then you can return it back in to Pro Tools. So now you can use that piece of hardware like a plug-in. So it's an I/O in and out. So basically every DAW has insert I/O. If you go to where your plugins are in Pro Tools, you go down to the bottom, it says I/O at the bottom. Now you're going in and out of the converter, which is feeding a piece of hardware. So that's what Freddy's doing. Am I correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
And invite Dylan up here to go on the 76.
Dylan, you want to go on the 76?
My favorite number. Ask me why. I love when the drums just fall.
Okay, so right now.
Nope. There you go. Yeah. Wasn't bad at all. No. I liked what you started with. I myself, I like the transparent feel as much as I can get. So that way when I do apply my thwack, if you will, for like less of better words, it's more apparent and more of a vibe providing entity in your mix. Oh, all
Yeah,
right.
what do you think of that?
Yeah, man. I mean, it wasn't far off. Right, yeah, right now it's a fairly slow attack around 7 and 13 with the release. You know, you time your release to taste, but at the end of the day, the tempo of the song dictates that. This track you're hearing now is just a drum check we did earlier.
I'm going to put a plug-in on here, and I'm going to try to get the on the inside. I'm going to tell you the 76 plug-in now.
So now we're going to show you the difference between the I/O insert with the actual hardware, the WA76, versus the 76 plug-in from any one manufacturer. Many people make them. They're all fairly similar, but when you have the accessibility to hardware, 9 times out of 10, it provides you more separation and a much bigger mix. I mean, you're going to hear things you wouldn't hear otherwise. That's why most people don't do it. You got to drop quite a bit of coin to get a whole rack of this compared to $100 on a stack of plugins. There is a difference, and there's a reason why many people don't do it.
So here's a plug-in.
This is the plugin. Here's the real thing. Already, I'm getting more saturation, more clarity, more everything. I guess that's the key word here is more. Drums are supposed to go boom, not thud. I like the outside compression myself. Not that I'm knocking the plugins, but you know, in my studio, I've got an 1176 for every drum shell that I hook up, and ever since I bought them, I haven't used anything but.
When you said the hardware, I think one of the biggest things that I notice about hardware is you can push it harder.
Oh yeah.
And with a drum kit, I mean, you get transients that are so, I mean, they're so abrupt, obviously the way you play it. But man, when you can drive it and it still sounds good when it's driven, and I think that's a big difference between plugins and hardware.
Yeah, you cannot replace actual science and heat with zeros and ones. You know, you get really close and they'll beg differ at NAMM all day long, but at the end of the day, who's the one sitting there doing it, making the records they're putting out? And who's the one not telling you everything you wished you knew? You know, it's the guys that don't say it all. But so definitely.
Let's go to the tom figure, okay? Tell them that's what we're doing.
All right, right now we're going to work on a tom. He's got a singular tom hip hold up, I believe.
Yeah.
A loop. Yeah, a little bit of mids taken out, a little bit of highs boosted. The drums were boomy to begin with. Want to hear the overheads? I like.
We're using the 14s, so the WA4, the WA14 is what it's.
The WA14s in a stereo pair configuration is what you're hearing on the overheads right now.
And we're panning only 20%.
Yeah.
Phasing.
Yeah, we're panning 20 left, 20 right, give or take. Very natural sound. Like that's the whole drum set sounds great by itself right there. And here's the room mic with the 4-button mash move. WA87 and the WA76. Yeah, man, the ride bell and the snare always does it for me, man. When you start mashing those moves like Zeppelin, That's pretty wide open, too. Yeah, there's no gating, not a lot of EQing. It's just good mic placement with good gear, with good people.
Let's walk through some of the other tracks here. Here's a bass. Let's go into the bass line.
All right.
Oh, it's gone away from me.
synth sub bass.
Just put weight on it. So Freddy's bringing in the bass guitar now. Those drums sounded good.
Some synthesizer stuff in here, and I'm actually, you know, we are at, where are we? We're at 115 beats per minute, so this is actually oscillating at that speed.
So the motion synth is actually oscillating at 115 BPM, which is the tempo of this song. So.
And what we did do, since we have some of that synthetic stuff going
You want to talk about this real quick?
Yeah. Since we have some of the synthetic going on where it's absolutely perfect, I played the clavinet live, I played the rhythm guitar live, so there's a little bit of push and pull, and it agrees with the live vocals, and I knew we weren't going to do, and we really don't need to, do any beat correction. We want it to be a live band mixed with some stuff. So you have to play it tight enough. But on a grid, a human being's not going to be ever gridded that way. And in certain styles of music, we could get away with that. Where when we work with Anthony's band, he's a stickler on everything agreeing, and then that one thing that doesn't to be real, you know. So that when you work with modern pop. Whereas when we did Dominic's band, The Waves, you know, that was some indie rock stuff that we let fly. You know, we may have put a kick drum on a bass guitar once in a while, but it's a totally different thing. Where your music's a composition that needs the exact quantization, like a lot of metal stuff would do. This, we're not doing that. So now I'm going to go to that thing. So you're going to hear a synth brass that was played live and a clav that was played live. Now that clav is coming in hard on the right. I needed a guitar on the left. I was producing earlier with Mr. Brooks over there, and he wanted a kind of a Stevia, Texas kind of blues guitar going, so I used the telly in neck position, so kind of emulating a Texas Stevie Ray thing through a Vox AC30, just straight in with its own grit, and that's supposed to be kind of playing with and interfering with the clavinet rhythm a little bit. So let's check what that sounds like. So to me, the overall vibe, there's a reason for everything. The motion synth, to me, I like how it does the timing thing, but it adds a suspense. The low end pumping gave it a little bit of an epic type sound, and the suspense, that's why we use that. But the clavinet, that's a traditional thing. The guitar's a traditional thing, and those are the funkier things in there. So that's pretty much where we're at. So let's get a little balance going with the mix. We're going to let it fly for a minute. I'm now focusing on the synth brass, the bop, ba-da, bop. You'll hear it. It's not 100% agreeing with the rhythm there, I don't believe, but at any rate, that may be pulled, redone, or mixed lower. Okay, so moving on, let's go to a two-bus situation. Now, right now, I'm just going to use an SSL bus compressor I have in a lunchbox, and I'm going to show you how we could suck this in at the end of the two-bus. And that's living right here. So you'll hear when we tighten everything up where it's going. Okay. Take the 2 bus off. All right. Cool. So let's go on to a guitar track. I'm going to attempt to lay down a lead guitar track. So I got 2 tracks opened up. How we're doing this is I have an AC30 mic'd up, then I have a Black Star mic'd up at the same time. One's higher, a little more gainy, one's darker, a little cleaner, and I'm going to be using the Palisades for a little bit, just a little bit of boost drive to clip the front end of the amp on the first solo. The second solo is a little more shreddy. I'm then going to go with a Black Star pedal, also in an overdrive mode. So it's kind of, would be like similar to using 2 tube screamers. One just set with the drive off and the output up, and that drives into one that has the drive up. So it kind of clips it, makes it a little bit more focused, if you will. So if we could, Dominic, if you don't mind, yeah, we're going to go ahead and hit the standbys on those amps, and we'll get a little sound check here on the guitar, and I'll see what I could do to this.
Freddy's a good guitar player. Don't let him kid you. He's okay. This is just the Black Star right now.
Okay, now just the Vox.
Just the Vox.
Combination of both,
Now both.
and about 40%.
They're panned about 40%.
Okay, let's run the track.
Nice. And we're running the track. So we got that.
Now I'm going to go to the end and put a little shred solo.
Now he's going to go to the end of the song and put a little shred solo. Obviously, the session's not mixed. He's adding another gain box right now. Nice.
So now we got those tracks.
So now the tracks are in the session.
I'm going to now explain how we're going to treat those tracks.
So now we're going to do a little bit of mixing to these tracks. Good job, Freddy.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so here is the Vox.
So
First track.
we're looking at the first track, the Vox.
Put a little bit of EQ on that and tell them I'm dipping a low end. I'm definitely doing a low end roll off.
He's doing on that actual guitar, he's doing a low end roll off. And what's the purpose for that? Just, it's
Just to get
really heavy.
the low air out of there and any cloudy frequencies. But
So-
I didn't want to do that going to tape because I wanted the body to be there.
Okay, so he wants to capture the body of the actual guitar. So doing that going to tape could be, very, it could be unfortunate because you might want the body of that guitar later on. You want to pick and choose that after the fact. That's probably a better way of doing it. So he's rolling that off. How many dBs are you rolling that off?
That was really being taken out of there. I'm like pulling it all the way over, believe it or not, to 70.
To around 70 hertz?
Yeah, and I'm lowering that minus 10 dB.
And it's about 10 dBs out. So,
Bump at somewhere around 2K.
and then a little lift at around 2K. So it could be room, it could be all kinds of stuff adding that.
Vox.
And that's the Vox.
So now the Black Star, very little roll off, a little bump
So-
at 70, a little downward on 70,
Okay, a little downward on 70 on the.
coming up around 2K, and then on this one, on this particular guitar, the thing here is the roll off was fizzy on top, so I did a high end roll off to get up.
Okay, and now what amp was it? This was the. This is the Vox or the.
No, this is now the Black.
Okay, so on the Black Star, you're actually doing the exact. The top end of that one, he actually rolled off. So
So we got,
we apologize, you can't see the screen.
and then in there I have some delay at time.
So he has some time delay.
Now, if I left the low end in on that low end's going to be creeping around in the delay, muddying up the whole mix.
Yeah, and the other reason for getting rid of a lot of that low end, I mean, you got kicks with low end, you got bass with low end, you got all this stuff that has to go into this song. Mixing's about getting everything to work, and the guitar is the last thing you think about with a lot of low end in it. Depends on the song, honestly, but in this song, you got to get rid of that to create space for these other, the kick drum, the bass, some of the synth stuff that all. I think the biggest problem in mixing that I get as a mastering guy is when a mix has way too much bass. The cloudiness in the bass, the image of the bass becomes almost like they would consider what they call one note bass, where you can't make out the actual notes. It's just a big harmonic effect. And in some genres of music like EDM, hip hop, you can get away with it, but in this genre, it really it really changes the image and it takes away from the actual players. So I just wanted to make note of that.
I'm going to now insert
So now he's going to insert two warm 76s. So once again on the actual insert side, you're going out and out. Now in this studio, there's a big spaghetti patch bay going on. But if you're at your own home studio, you might just go right out of your converter, and then you can feed a piece of warm. I mean, people ask me this question all the time on the YouTube channel. How do I get that to route? So it's going out of the converter into the 76 here, and then Freddy has total control in the mix with the hardware. So it's called an I/O in Pro Tools, and every other DAW out there, if you use, whichever DAW you use, there's a way to do this.
Okay, so let's listen to here's the
So here we go.
compressor, just one.
Just one compressor,
No, just one guitar.
just one guitar right now. No, that's a 12-to-1 ratio. He's all the way at -5 here. I'm the play-by-play. So a fast attack. Why do you do the fast attack? So he wants to grab the transients of the pick. That's the reason for the fast attack, and that's one of the fastest compressors out. And that evens the sound, by the way. When you have that pick and you're playing and you want to turn up a mix louder, you have to have compression. The louder you want your mix, the more compression you have to have. That's just the way it works. It's pretty crazy. But compressors that do it on this level, that's the key to the real high, professional mixes that you hear. So yeah, compression's an interesting thing. It's a great thing to start learning, I'll tell you that. So yeah, with the compression techniques that were applied, I mean, this thing has an image of its own now, and it's really tight in the mix, and he can bring it up in the mix without it, playing havoc on the stuff around it. That's one of the big reasons for compression. It's to create space in a mix. So when you compress something, it's actually making the dynamic range smaller. And in Synth, what you do when you turn it up is you get a much better image of that guitar. It's crazy how it works, but that's how it works. So he's going to turn the delay down a little bit.
Now, for songwriting purposes, I wanted to add harmony, so it was a little more harmonious than that. So on certain key figures in the solo, I added ahead of time a third higher, and that would be this track here. So I added a harmony on the last note and on that figure there. Now in the shred solo, I did the same kind of thing. Here's the harmony mixed with the lead track. Deep in it, I just added a few little ambient things. Just give a little harmony to the ear there, right there on that da-ga-da-ga-da-ga-da. And at the end, there's sweeping arpeggios. I thought I'd add more energy and put a third higher than those. So I'm playing a B minor arpeggio to a D major arpeggio. And for those of you who know music theory, I'm then doing a D major while the B major's playing, and I'm doing an F sharp minor arpeggio while the D major's playing. So they're just parallel third harmonies. And then here's the shred solo. Take a listen to that. Okay, wonderful. Now, we pre-sound checked the microphone. We're using the WA14 microphone for the vocal, so it's pre-sound checked. It's running into this bottom Pultec style EQ, the WA2 BQ. It's hitting then, well, we're not. We usually would hit an 1176 on this, but for this particular track, we're just going right into a 3A. And I'm hitting the 3A pretty conservative right now. I'm going to go just a -3 on this and probably hit it harder in the mix. So I'm going to put a compression. It's in limiting mode. I could switch this over to compression mode. So limiting starts around 20 to 1. For those of you that know something about compression, a 20 to 1 is going to be a much, I don't want that. I want this to breathe more. I want it to be more natural. I don't want to compress that much. And I don't want the ratio being so aggressive. So we're going to go ahead and find the singer. I'm going to go track him down. So you...
So he's got to find the singer. I think Freddy mentioned the 2A. He called it a 3A. And this is usually what happens with the singer. You can't find him. But this is more of a 3A. There's 3 of them, so just make up for that. You find the singer yet? So actually, this box is a 2A. The 2A's got a real big sound to it. I mean, I got a second here where they find him. But the 2A's a real warm sound, and I think Anthony was talking about it. He said this one has like a real clean sound to it. It's a newer box. I mean, some of the 2A's that people were, sought after compression, those compressors, unfortunately, it's like some of my favorite gear. I mean, it gets older and it's got, different issues that start to take place with it. But the Worm Company's done a fantastic job. So, I mean, pretty much you're hearing the whole mix, the drums, everything, the guitars, everything going through. And it gives it just this sound. You can't put your finger on a 76 sound or a 2A sound. It's just something that's like that wow factor you get. When you put a piece of equipment in the signal path, and that's what most of you guys will get. So it's pretty cool. Did you find him?
Oh, yeah. He should be in there.
All right. Okay, he's in there.
Cool. Okay, so we already pre-sound checked this and everything, so we're good to go. Hey, give me a thumbs up if you hear. Give me a thumbs up if you hear the music. I think he's hearing it a whole lot. So we had it obviously very loud for the drummer to hear. So that's probably a bit much for the vocalist. We don't do those things on purpose. Okay, how are we hearing now? Let's just dive into it. Client's paying for this. We got to get this done quick. So as usual, we spend all the time on a motion synth and then give the singer like 2 seconds to get his part. So now, okay, so again, this will be the final part to this song. So just to recap, we have the live drum set, the loop playing the distorted lo-fi loop. We have a motion synth. We have some synth hits. We have a clavinet. We have rhythm guitar, the lead guitars, lead guitar harmonies, and there's also a sub bass and electric bass. So making mention of the electric bass, I used this DNA bass, and how I did that was I played off of it's typical like a Fender jazz sound. You play off this, and I roll the tone all the way off to give it a real old school. I don't want that any metallic-y sound. So the tone's rolled way off, and I play very percussive with the tips of my fingers to get the punch out of it. And it gives a real particular sound. That's what's going on there. I needed that to separate from the bass synth. The bass synth is oscillating underneath, and I needed to punch above that. So I almost thought of this as more of like a piccolo snare. So if you thought vocally, you would have your, everyone knows what a soprano is and an alto. I thought of, this is the soprano, and the bass synth is the alto in those terms. Okay, so I'm trying to put them in different, not just arrange them in different playing-wise, but put them in different frequency zones, so in the mix they can agree, because they're two low instruments. It's very hard to get two low instruments to agree. Of course, the 76 that I used on this, the signal path I used, I hit the 76 at a 4-to-1 ratio, then I limited into the 2A while I track, so I had a lot of grip right there. This tightened everything up, but kept a real nice warmth from the transformers. So let's go ahead. So we're going to just roll this thing, okay? We're just going to do a one take for this. Here you go.
Oh, it's gone away from me. Oh, the thrill is gone now, baby. Oh, it's gone away from me. And all I wanna do is wish you well, well. I said it's gone. Oh, it's gone away from me.
Okay, so we got that going on. All right, so that's the vocal. That's the final take of the song. So now we can go into mix mode. We'll tweak the mix a little bit more. It's already been inserted to this two-way, so I'm going to keep it in there. We're going to play around with the vocal track a little bit and show you how when I increase this, the threshold increases as well. So as I increase the input gain on these type of compressors, these older school type of compressors, as I'm increasing the gain, it naturally is creating, is hitting the threshold more, and it's creating the ratio. So it's working for you. They're very easy to use. This isn't as detailed as what I could draw in on here, but it's very magical how it's put together. It's design. There's tubes in here as well, so hitting a voice with a tube and get the tube warmth on it is a very cool thing. So I'm just going to hit this right now and play with the vocal a bit.
Wish you well, well, well.
So we're right here.
All I wanna do is wish you well, well, well. All I wanna do is wish you well, well, well. All I wanna do is wish you well, well, well. All I wanna do is wish you well, well, well. All I wanna do is wish you well, well, well.
So as I reduce the peaks, okay, notice I'm going to lose level. And that's why this is here. Your output gain, as many people call it, the makeup gain. If I want a good signal-to-noise ratio, I don't want to raise that louder than my dry signal is coming in. However, we're going to use it as an effect. I'm going to crush it and bring it in. It's going to bring in a lot of misbehaving frequencies. It could bring in some lower, darker room sound we don't want, some natural reverb, and then I'll chisel that off with the EQ. And at the end of the day, I may not be able to use that. The song may be a little too funky to distort it that heavily, but you are getting harmonic distortion here. So now that I'm crushing it like this, I'm going to have to lift this output gain.
All I want to do is wish you well, well, well.
So here's less compression.
Do is wish you well, well, well. All I want to do is wish you well.
Since we compressed down to, well, we'll say disc, since we compressed on the way in, I don't want to over-compress. So I'm going to use 2 compressors and stages. So I'll probably, if I were to actually put the final mix on this, I'm thinking probably maybe -5 on this, and that's probably aggressive enough against that -3 I did going in. Let's see how it agrees with the song is the main thing.
All I wanna do is wish you well. 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 All I wanna do is wish you well.
Okay, now what parallel compression is several ways to do this. I'm just simply copying the track, and on the other track, I might use a different compressor. I might use a 76 and really aggressively distort that. I'm really messing with the dynamic range, though. It's going to sit there, and it's going to react. I mean, there's many, we could talk about this forever, this parallel compression, but for one thing is it's going to add an aggressive hair to it that's going to sit there very level, but yet his more dynamic one, you're going to hear his peaks a little bit in his dynamic range. And I think the song, even though it's heavily compressed, it was performed kind of dynamic, you know, with the clavinet, and there's some smaller nuances, and he kind of sang to that, it felt with me. So I don't want to crush it too hard, but we are going to run a parallel on that, and I'll let you hear what that sounds like.
All I wanna do is wish you well. All I wanna do is wish you well. All I wanna
Now we're going to listen to the two together.
all I wanna do is wish you well.
Now, I'm kind of getting carried away here. On some projects, and probably not this one, but on some projects, I'll use different delays, different reverbs, and I'm going to we're combining 3 reverbs and 2 different types of delays between the 2 tracks. So I'm going to solo those up as well, the reverb and the delay track. The delay, of course, is timed. I believe it's a 8th note triplet delay. I have a slap back that's just used for some imaging, and a longer delay mixed in.
All I wanna do is wish you well. All I wanna do is wish you well.
Now, in the heat of the mix, I might have to take out some 70 hertz, some lower end of the reverb to help make that agree. I like what it's doing to the sibilants, but it could start creating a buildup in a cloud throughout and kind of start ruining the whole mix. But at any rate, for just a quick up and running thing here, I think we got something that's somewhat agreeing with the song, and let's hear Mr. Brooks in action.
Till it's gone. Oh, it's gone away from me. Oh, the thrill is gone now, baby. Oh, it's gone away from me. But all I wanna do is wish you well. I said it's gone. Oh, it's gone away from me. And I'm free from your spell. And all I wanna do is wish you well, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to do one final pass of the whole mix. I'm going to tweak a couple things as it goes, but you'll hear now the whole arrangement. So essentially, the day started with somebody asking us to do a remake of Thrill Is Gone. We don't want it long. We need it 2 minutes. They're going to use it for an industry commercial. And they wanted some things to happen with it. They definitely wanted rock, shredding guitar. They wanted a real aggressive vocal, aggressive drum. And then, you know, the way the client is describing things, it sounded to me they wouldn't mind a little bit of synthesizer in there, the motion synth that's used in dance music and trance music and EDM a lot. But we want to pull some of that in, and we have a smorgasbord of stuff here that we got to make sense of. Typically, a great thing to do would be not to mix it today, and let it sit and see what's agreeing and not agreeing. Because after you listen to it for a long time, you start settling on things that maybe weren't rhythmically perfect, and you listen to it back, and it's not as tight as it could have been. But for all intents and purposes, today we wanted to use this project for the Warm seminar. And this last pass-through is just going to be minor little tweaks, but at least you'll hear what you're listening for now is the arrangement, the songwriting part of it, the actual arranging. And before we play it, Dylan, I'd like you to make a couple comments. Dylan uses warm audio at his studio at Mad Rabbit Media, as does Doug in his studio. And let's, Dylan, any comments before we play the final?
Not so much in regards to this, but I should have probably put this in the beginning of the segment. Back to this compression and the WA2As and the 76s. For one, tracking. When you're passing through these as opposed to just going straight through your DAW, you now have the chance to almost, not even if your needle's not even moving, you're almost just tone shaping, especially with these. You cannot compress anything whatsoever, but to tape with a vocal or a kick or a snare, something that sounds good, but just might seem a little stale or generic, it's in check, you're happy with it, but if you wanted to make it special and put a little bit extra effort into it, it's effortless to straight just insert one of these on the channel and just play with the output gain here. Reamping. A lot of times you'll get people that have done recordings in their home and they've got your typical little fire pod or, you know, the duet or something small, and they want it to sound more professional, a little bigger, more vibe for lack of a better word. You can take these tools that you see right here and do exactly that in a fraction of the time. You just pass them all through one at a time. Say you want a kick, a snare, and you want a little more air, a little less hiss on a vocal. You know, you can find these things in a quick amount of time and re-render them just like that. Now you've got something completely different than you started with, and it's just got more character, more vibe, more everything, for a fraction of the cost of buying all these conventional ones that we're all so used to over the years. When you're tracking, you know, a lot of people say they don't want to EQ to tape. They don't want to compress the tape. They're scared. They don't want to commit because they don't know yet. Maybe they're building as they go in their mix, you know, whatever the scenario. Again, just passing through these things. You can treat each one of these like a soft clip or a soft liner, you know. Just do not use it aggressively and pass through, and it will, if you take the diligent time, you know, take care of those transients that just poke up every now and again. Thus, when you go to apply your mix later, you get more, better, faster. That's what I would say. And then again, in post-production, when you're actually mixing with these and you're sitting there and you're going through all your plugin list and you're searching for options, you're looking for colors, you can go straight to these things and dive in hard, right? So say you start biting real hard into any one of these compressors. You're scared. You don't know if that's going to work or not. You don't want to commit to that, but it's really cool at the moment. You just don't have the time because the client's ready for the files tomorrow. You can simply print in parallel, keep it dry, and print another one, you know, with a reamp, and then have that option, whether you're sending it to a client or using it for yourself and safeguarding your mix day tomorrow. That's basically it. That's what I had in my mind, because those are the things I do on a daily basis, and it changes my workflow, for sure.
All right. Great, Dylan. Also, wonderful playing today. Wonderful singing, Dave. We're going to play this through, and then we got a real treat for you. Doug's going to go through showing you how he uses his warm audio stuff on some hip-hop vocals. So let's take a quick listen to see what we arranged here and the excitement we may or may have not created.
Me. Oh, the thrill is gone now, baby. Oh, it's gone away from me. But all I wanna do is wish you well, well. I said it's gone. Oh, it's gone away from me. And I'm free.
version of Thrill is gone. Doug, take it away. So what do I got to do? You want me to patch in what? All right, I'll work on that.
So I need a 76 and a 2A. So a hip-hop vocal is a unique thing. I think a lot of people get it a little bit backwards. It's a little bit backwards to most vocals. Most vocals, you want it to have a smooth sound. I mean, you want to grab the transients early. But when you're thinking about EDM, these guys really like compress and EQ and go to work. Where a hip-hop vocal, if you look at a 76, you almost treat a hip-hop vocal like a drum. With a drum, you're letting the initial transients come through. And what we want to do is make the compressor, so the compressor lets that initial attack of that hip-hop artist vocal to come through to the tape or to the DAW or whatever you're printing to. And then it clamps down. And since you're trying to work with the attack and the release in the same time of the instrumental. So if the instrumental, you just have to feel this out. I think people talk about BPM, beats per minute, things like that. I listen by just listening. I listen to how the artist went and how he's hitting the kick and the snare, because in hip hop, it's all about the kick and the snare. It's all about the bass. That's what people say, right? So you have a huge 808. You have this 808 that fills in the song. I don't know any hip hop song that has been turned out in the last decade without an 808. So we're going to get into that. So the 76, I got to do it. I'm a feel kind of engineer. I feel it out on this song that I did. It's actually the artist's name on this, just the vocal. His name's Chris Rivers. He's the son of the late Big Pun for all you hip hop fans out there. So once Freddy gets this patching, I know it looks like a spaghetti warehouse over here. You got it? So this is just going to be a quick thing. I'm just going to hit the compressors, the 76, the 2A. I'm going to show you how you get that in-your-face vocal, and it has a lot to do with timing. So.
Never hate to panic, 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 never hate to panic.
So we're gonna let the instrumental play with the vocal. Just loop that region, Freddie, if you could for me, just where that guy's vocal is, right there, or right there, just in that region somewhere. Thanks, man. With the music. I listen. Here, go ahead and stop that for a minute. So when I mix, I got to listen to the music. I got to listen to how his vocal is attacking. I almost feel like he's over top of the kick and the snare. So in a hip-hop mix, it's funny, like the more hip-hop mixes I've done, the more a client will come to me and say, hey, can you turn the vocal up more? Can you turn the vocal up more? And a lot of times it's like, I can't turn it up too much louder or you're not going to hear the music. And this is the way to get it to sound louder with compression without it, being so loud that everything else sounds horrible. So here we go. I'm going to try to do this live. This is like from the start point. This has no plugins, no nothing. This is like raw files. So let's see if we can get it sounding decent. So here we go. Time out.
Stop the slaving, they just amputate them mentally. Cause they done severed all that energy and what we all been meant to be. Paying bills and dying wasn't all my papa left for me. I gotta make him proud, lay it down, they take it. The world is
okay, you had that too. All right, we're good.
And all you active citizens in all the states of panic. I never played the addicts, I ain't making pay. It's a steady state above it all. Like later addicts, I've been tempted though, attempted those. Flexing rows, threaded rows, stretching foes. Head from hoes, nigga, where you headed though? That's what I ask myself without a stumble past myself. If I'm the reason why I fell, then I can help and grab myself. We been indoctrinated, cops and all the doctors say niggas getting shot. Then they operated, do the same. We get locked and taken, they just stopped us from retaliating. They ain't stopped the slaving, they just amputate them mentally. Cause they done severed all that energy and what we all been meant to be. Paying bills and dying wasn't all my papa left for me. I gotta make him proud, lay it down, they take it. The world is ours, take it now, it's real. Change the planet, and all you active citizens in all the states of panic. I never played the addicts, I ain't making pay. It's a steady state above it all. Like later addicts, I've been tempted though, attempted those. Flexing rows, threaded rows, flexing foes, head from hoes, away.
So at the end of that, you heard it out of the path. So this is just a starting point. I mean, so if you look at the 76, it is a very, very slow attack, actually. It's not a real fast one. I don't want it to grab his initial transient. A lot of people think the exact opposite. I want it to be fast. I want it to grab the transient, but that's what I'm using the 2A for. So the 2A is going to grab this. Let me spend another 2 minutes on it. This is a trick you guys can try at your own studio if you buy a 76 and 2A. But this is the signal path that I find myself going to when it comes to a hip-hop vocal that needs to sound big. At the end of that, before Freddy stopped the music, you notice that the vocal went from here to like below the music. So go ahead and hit play one more time, Freddy, and we'll see what happens.
And all you acting citizens and all the states of panic. I never played the addicts. I ain't making pay. It's a steady state above it all. Like a later addicts.
Turn on the insert.
Change the planet. And all you acting citizens and all the states of panic. I never played the addicts. I ain't making pay. It's a steady state above it all. Like a later addicts. I've been tempted though. Attempted those. Flexing rows. Threaded rows. Stretching foes. Head from hoes. Nigga, where you headed though? That's what I ask myself without a stumble past myself. If I'm the reason why I fell, then I can help and grab myself. We've been indoctrinated. Cops and all the doctors hate niggas getting shot. Then they operated, do the same. We get locked and taken. They just stopped us from retaliating. They ain't stopped the slavery. They just amputate them. Cause they done severed all the energy and what we all been meant to be. Paying bills and dying wasn't all my papa left for me. I gotta make him proud, lay it down, they take it. The world is ours, take it now, it's change the planet. And all you acting citizens and all the states of panic. I never played the addicts, I ain't making pay. It's a steady state above it all. Like a later addicts, I've been tempted though, attempted those. Flexing rows, threaded rows, stretching foes. Head from hoes, nigga, where you headed though? That's what I ask myself without a stumble past myself. If I'm the reason why I fell, then I can help and grab myself. We've been indoctrinated. Cops and all the doctors hate niggas getting shot, then they op.
Okay, so that was pretty much it. You're using them in conjunction. So the more 76 I have, the less 2A I have. So the less 2A I have, the more 76. So a lot of people will reach me on my YouTube channel and say, man, Doug, how do you get that sound? And this is really just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth until you find the sound you want. There is no right or wrong. But the attack and release has a lot to do with your beats per minute in a song. And what I was trying to do is just feel it out to the point where the 76 is grabbing, letting go, and then it's coming back to the snare drum. So it sounds like it's in rhythm with the song. So it was just a simple, basic thing for you hip-hop guys out there. I'm not getting into huge detail with reverbs, compression inside with sidechain compression, because most vocals, the hip-hop vocal will go through a sidechain to a parallel, and then we'll do some cool stuff, some effects, time-based effects, and things like that. But that was a dry vocal. For you New York hip-hop guys, this is the sound that you're usually hearing. It's got a grit to it if you hit it real hard. So that was about it, Freddie. That's all I wanted to talk about.
You want to hit it one more time?
Yeah.
You got your input down low. Your input is
You should have a lot more.
Yeah, they were hammering me up here with the input was way too loud. So let's try it one more time.
Change the planet, and all you acting
That's better.
citizens and all the states of panic. I never played the addicts, I ain't making pay. It's a steady state above it all.
There we go.
Change the planet, and all you acting citizens and all the states of panic. I never played the addicts, I ain't making pay. It's a steady state above it all. Like a later addicts, I've been tempted
Thanks.
though, attempted those. Flexing rows, threaded rows, stretching foes. Head from hoes, nigga, where you headed though? That's what I ask myself without a stumble past myself. If I'm the reason why I fell, then I can help and grab myself. We've been indoctrinated, cops and all the doctors hate niggas getting shot. Then they operated, do the same. We get locked and taken, they just stopped us from retaliating. They ain't stopped the slavery, they just amputate them mentally. Cause they done severed all the energy and what we all been meant to be.
Could you put
Paying
the,
bills and dying wasn't all my papa left for me. I gotta make him proud, lay it down, they take it. The world is ours, take it now, it's change the planet. And all you acting citizens and all the states of panic. I never played the addicts, I ain't making pay. It's a steady state above it all. Like a later addicts, I've been tempted though, attempted those. Flexing rows, threaded rows, stretching foes. Head from hoes, nigga, where you headed though? That's what I ask myself without a stumble past myself. If I'm the reason why I fell, then I can help and grab myself. We've been indoctrinated, cops and all the doctors hate niggas getting shot. Then they operated, do the same. We get locked and taken, they just stopped us from retaliating. They ain't stopped the slavery, they just amputate them mentally. Cause they done severed all the energy and what we all been meant to be. Paying bills and dying wasn't all my papa left for me. I gotta make him proud, lay it down, they take it. The world is ours, take it now, it's change the planet. And all you acting citizens and all the states of panic. I never played the addicts, I ain't making pay. It's a steady state above it all. Like a later addicts, I've been tempted though, attempted those. Flexing rows, threaded rows, stretching foes. Head from hoes, nigga, where you headed though? That's what I ask myself without a stumble past myself. If I'm
So that's like pretty much as basic as you can get. I would have probably done EQ. I would have messed with the trim gain. I think you guys were doing that. Yeah, trying to mess with the trim gain because we're not getting to feed the compressor. This was the end of the video thing, something we just wanted to show you real quick. But the 76 and the 2A is just sought after for that. I mean, if you've heard a hip hop vocal, it's probably ran through a 76. I mean, probably most vocals have ran through a 76. So the whole goal in showing you this is I let the initial attack of the compressor, so it's a little bit slower. So it's letting those transients come through so you don't lose the what I classify the hip hop vibe, where it's real quick. It's almost like a drum kit in a sense. Yeah, and sometimes you can reverse them, exactly. So the thing is a hip hop is a very percussive genre, and you want to treat your compressor like a percussive, like a kick drum, like a snare drum, like a hi-hat. Get the energy of the initial transients to come forward while grabbing, and it makes the actual artist sound tighter in the mix. It's really crazy. So try it out. If you purchase one of these, if you have plugins right now in the box, try it. Longer attack, shorter release, almost like a kick snare drum kind of combo. Hit it into a 2A that just softens it up, brings it back in the mix, and then you got a hip hop vocal, and then you got to do a bunch of other stuff. But nobody did that because I can't give you all that. No, I'm just joking. All right, Freddie.
I want to thank everybody. I also want to thank American Musical Supply for sponsoring this as well. So when you're looking for gear, American Musical Supply, check them out. I want to thank definitely Dylan Roth for his playing, Dave Brooks, Dominic Merletti, Anthony Fondale, Doug Jenkins, and just to make mention, we are a production house. We could do stems. We could do full-on production from your first guitar chord all the way to the final project. We have obviously session players, staff writers, videos, also for commercials for your businesses as well. So we do all kinds of things, the whole gamut, from performance to production to songwriting. So I want to thank everybody. Again, we're going out on Anthony Fondale's song that he wrote for his band Recess, and it's his brother Vince singing lead, and Anthony did the production on this song. I want to thank everybody. Dylan Roth, Mad Rabbit Media, being here, Doug Jenkins, iMix and Master. Check out this guy's YouTube channel. He gives all kinds of lessons. You got somewhere in the order of 100,000 subscribers there. So, and then please subscribe to my YouTube channel, Freddy Demarco, and also share things. Let's make the community grow. We're at Demarco School of Music is one of our Facebook pages. We also have Demarco's Recording Studio, and then my personal Freddy Demarco. So I want to thank everybody. I also want to thank my partner in crime and the love of my life, Julie Schott, for being partners at the school and the studio. And that's about it for us today. Thank everybody for being here and everybody at home listening. We are going to extend for the people that did show up for the event. We're extending a shootout. So we're going to let them play with the mix, play with the compressors, shoot them out with our other Universal Audio 76s compared to the WA. That's one of the benefits you get for showing up. Because of the limitations of streaming, we're not going to do that over the stream. So we'll be here another half hour doing that. But we're going to sign off from the stream right now. We want to thank everyone for joining us.